5:20. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call in attendance here. We have David Kopke, Lucas Wallace, myself, Greg Worth, Joel Ebert, and members of the public. We have Ann Houserack and Grant Woods. Online, we have Kevin Reckoff, James Serwo, and Jason Zand. Okay, and we have full membership here. We have a quorum. Okay. Next item is approval of the meeting minutes. So last month, the action items was approval of the new board bylaws. So any questions, comments? If not, we'll take the minutes approved as submitted. Seeing none, we'll move on. Next agenda item, staff update. So David, the floor is yours.
Sure. Start off with the staff update was modified from what was submitted. So I'll be talking on a couple of them out of courtesy, but in the future, any additions to my report need to be run across me before we publish it. So the ADA inventory update, they're busily downloading and extracting the data that they collected around Helena. The LiDAR data is looking really well. We had a demo of it 2 weeks ago, and the measuring tools that are included with this software are pretty nice, are really nice. You know, we can measure ramps, we can measure verticals. The LiDAR data went out. I can't remember where they said 40 feet, and I don't know if it's 40 feet from the back of curb or back of sidewalk, but it's actually catching, like the piece that we saw was down fee there. So we got the entire building face of the days in there. That in itself is not that useful, but say on the south side where we have a lot of, one side of the street is steep decline, the other side of the street is steep upcline, incline, we can do some queries on that to show some of those areas to show the commission where, you know, boulevard sidewalks may be, you know, the feasibility of boulevard sidewalks may be questionable in certain areas depending on the topography adjacent to the back of curb. There's a lot of other extraction or queries that we can use. So it's still scheduled for mid to late December go live date. Kind of depends on the extraction, which you'll get an update next week on. The school zone update, middle school. We met with the school district. They asked for a few things along Idaho, specifically for the no parking, loading, and unloading zone to be removed. They want to try to get people to park out on the street instead of being kind of a free-for-all out there. And then they're going to start working on some improvements to their property to help with the parent drop off and, you know, other traffic flow considerations. The other thing that was documented in that was there's only a school zone on a portion of around the school, so the city's going to go in and put in the school zone on all the abutting streets for that. We haven't decided on what the next school is, but we're going to go to the school district will let us know which school they want us to look at next, and we'll systematically go to look at the schools on an individual basis through the winter time. So
is there a date? So like the remove the loading zone, that's just down signs. Is that, when is there a time schedule of when that's going to occur?
No, because it occurred like the day before I went on vacation, and I just got back from vacation this morning, so we'll get it scheduled in the next couple of weeks. I mean, calling in locates for signs is not that big a deal. It's a 3-day wait, and then pounding the posts in. Um, we're most definitely get them within the next couple of weeks. So
That's what the schedule is imminent, but
yeah,
with it,
no, it's
by next month, this will be crossed off.
it should be as long as we have enough school zone signs, and I don't foresee that we can't get those, but
the 50-mile-an-hour
Mhm.
school zone signs.
So it's a done deal with the commission of that approve it or something.
No,
As long as it's adjacent to a school, it fits the standards.
the sidewalk ADA ramps, they're going basically ramp to ramp at this point, as the weather allows, and then they'll go into winter shutdown as soon as winter decides to set in for the long haul. The pedestrian crossings at Montana. So after I gave you these agenda, we did receive some comments from MDT. We're going to go back and clarify because they, I guess there were some questions on the comments that they gave us, specifically whether or not they wanted one particular treatment or the other. They were concerned about right away. Our consultants already looked at that, so there's just some discussion back and forth. Once we get those nailed down, then we'll be scheduling that public meeting for the options that MDT is open to be discussed at a public meeting.
And then is that hope that that'll be this summer then after a meeting, or is it future years that we're looking at?
So we have funding in for one crossing. The Bozeman, Montana crossing was in the budget. The Lindale crossing, we were encouraged to reapply or resubmit that one by MDT. So we left that one in the hopes of getting a TA grant. And for whatever reason, this year, the Bozeman crossing scored higher than the Lindale crossing. So, and we didn't receive any TA funds. So right now it's looking like Bozeman, depending on public comment period, this, in the next month or two, hopefully we can at least get the design and hopefully construction next summer, but I'm not going to make any promises, as MDT had some concerns about putting a crossing there with some backup to the railroad and things. I don't think that we won't be insurmountable to have that discussion, but it might take a little bit longer than a couple comments, back and forth responses.
Okay. And so then as far as the window, when that is on hold, because it's not funded.
There's no funding this.
But keep in mind, we can ask for
So the number 5 that was added to the report, I'll just address. The modification was made to because the west slope was so abrupt, it was causing some increased or frequent. The fire trucks going over that was causing some problems with their leaf springs. So that was the main purpose for extending that a few feet so that it wasn't as abrupt.
So if we flatten that, can we implement an alternate complete street features at that intersection?
The maintenance is done, and until we get the project of mini malfunction. So right now, mini malfunction is in the CIP. After looking at the corridor a couple months ago, we had looked at potentially putting another roundabout up at Benton Last Chance, or not Benton Last Chance, Benton and Neal there. And then trying to, road diet is not the correct term because it's not reducing the lanes, but it would be reducing the asphalt width between the two intersections. So what would be reduced would be turned into boulevards to basically some aesthetics and, you know, add any potential bike lanes or whatever, because we do have a lot of asphalt out there, and hopefully tie the two projects together. Knowing that we're only looking at funding the one, we're going to be looking at trying to get some grant funding for the other one and the street improvements between the two. And that's when we would address the total complete streets aspect of that.
But that would be 5+ years.
No, we have preliminary design going out for the mini malfunction and some public outreach. So I think it is in the 2025 or 6 budget, 26 budget, I believe, for the construction of it, depending on what we get back for public comments and comments from MDT, since that's technically their intersection.
So that would be an opportunity to put in complete street features to address the table application.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, mini malfunction is
Right there by T-Mobile and the Man Store. Yeah, it's the Neil and Helen Avenue and Cruz.
So then, Benton and Neil, there's also, I mean, the whole Neil and the whole thing, all of it's under MDT, right? Where's Neil not?
No, Neil is.
Can Neil be removed? Or is there an advantage to if you can get funding?
That's what we're exploring with the new MPO. Most of that's MPO dollars. We did find out that we're going to be getting an update here next week from MDT that there's some implementation dollars potentially out there for MPOs that are, I don't want to call them set asides, but they're, you know, money that could be potentially for just MPOs. So that's one of those pots that we could pull from. I mean, narrowing the street and adding boulevard is not going to be an expensive endeavor. Putting in the complete streets features are not going to be a huge expense compared to the intersections themselves, but most of those signals downtown are at or not meeting the signal warrants anymore. And I guess my personal opinion is roundabouts are a better alternative to the signals because they lower the speeds. They're a very good traffic calming, but still allowing traffic flow, not only for vehicles, but for bicycles and pedestrians because of the lower speeds, and people have more aware, I believe, going around the roundabouts of their surroundings because they're looking for the traffic potentially coming in. So I think it's a better treatment for that area. And by narrowing in that, you know, that gets us up to Benton, and then that can, you know, go into the discussion of potentially from that intersection down to Euclid and Benton, and talking with MDT about that stretch of road. So it's kind of hopefully set up the dominoes so that we can get that corridor done, and then that sets up Benton to be addressed in the future as well. There's no updates for the rest of the items that were added. So on the future items, the crossing at Stewart and Benton, we have, so we have rectangular rapid flash beacons, but that's a multi-lane facility plus it's MDT. So we were kind of waiting to see back on what their comments were for the pedestrian crossings at Montana and Bozeman. Not that those are apples to apples because of the volume of traffic, but to see where MDT was as far as in regards to multi-lane pedestrian crossings. So once we get that hashed out, then hopefully we can go in, and I think a overhead RFB could work there, but they might want a full stop hawk there or a modified hawk. So we'll work on that through the winter to see what we can get done there.
Can you just reduce it?
That's going to be a lot longer discussion than
Well, and that, I guess, my opinion, not that I'm against RFBs, but they're almost, an RFB to me is a recognition the street's too wide.
well, to me, it's a pedestrian actuated signal, so that instead of the old flashing yellow lights from old that blinked all day long and drivers ignored, these ones are pedestrian actuated. So when they're flashing, people actually pay attention, and
well, they help, but the better improvement is cross two lane traffic. Yeah, well, I mean, sorry.
So there's no updates for the other two other than what I just gave you on the mini malfunction policy. The sidewalk summit, we requested dates from the commission to see what's available on their calendar for them to meet in a work session and sometime in December or January. I haven't heard back from the clerk's office of when that could be. We requested early, the second week of December, but realizing that between Thanksgiving and December it gets hectic for pretty much everyone, just with the holidays and traveling and everything. So it might be in January when we come back from the new year, but we'll wait and see on that one. As far as the second item that was added, we'll start the budgeting process in December-ish is usually when we start the budget process, and that starts with staff. And then in January, February, we start looking at those kind of operational budgets. But my recommendation has always been in the past, for MTech specifically, if there's projects that you want considered by the commission to be budgeted, the sooner the better that they get to the commission so that they can come back down to us so we can evaluate them from a staff level, and then go back to them and make our recommendations or give them our basically thoughts on the projects and what we think are the preliminary cost estimates, and then they can guide the discussion on which way they want to go.
But can we see the preliminary budget?
There's nothing made right now. All we have is what's been approved.
But you said you're going to be working on it, and then when's the earliest it would be available?
Haven't even seen a budget schedule, so probably February, March.
That's why I have it on here, is that, I think by the time we got to have a chance to look at it, I'd like to have a specific impact agenda item to look at it as early as possible. Because the only time we looked at it is, when it got published on the website.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, if you have specific projects that you want budgeted, you need to get them to the commission as soon as possible, because it's going to take time to get those to go up to the commission for them to have a discussion about it, and then they can say, please look at all these, or please look at this one, or whatever, for us to look at it. It's going to take us a couple of weeks, and then we have to get back on the commission agenda. So all I'm saying is that's at best a couple month process, depending, once you start getting into the budget cycle, their time is taken up by budget meetings and other things. So if there's specific things that you guys would like to see budgeted, then that would be something to submit to them now, so that we can start looking at preliminary numbers for those. I can tell you right now that, because of some The maintenance issues, there's gonna be a bigger chip seal year this year, or this coming budget cycle. Um, But other than that, that's about all that we've, plus what's in our CIP, so.
Well, it's kind of the flip side of the coin of, yes, if there's certain things that we think the city should be spending money on, but then sometimes you may want to have input that to say, we don't think you should be spending money on X.
Well, I'm not saying that you don't have that conversation after the preliminary budget gets. I'm just saying that those things that you really want, like Centennial Trail or the crossing at Lindale, to get those in front of the commission so that they can go through the process of going to the commission saying, yes, this is a priority for us. And then going back down to staff, and then staff going back to the commission and saying, this is what we think our probable costs are. Because if that goes on too far, then, you get into the latter part of the budget cycle, which makes it harder to start adjusting things that may or may not have already been put in.
And that, there's some things that I would like to see removed from the budget. And when I made the comments, it was like, we're too far in the process that it just wasn't addressed, so, I don't know how much the commission wants to get into the nuts and bolts of it, so I'd like to deal with it on a lower level.
Yeah, and that's entirely up to you. I'm just making a recommendation for projects that you would like to see funded, so.
But the budget will be available like February.
I don't think the budget will be available. We'll be in the midst of developing it in probably February. I don't remember last year when we came out with the draft preliminary. I'd have to look back and see when our meeting was with the commission. I want to say maybe it was March, April that we had the when they saw our budget, and we basically walked through it. And each department sits down with the commission during a budget work session, to go through that. So.
Well, let me ask you this: are you anticipating much change from the budget? The fiscal 25 budget would change from the fiscal 24 budget.
As far as amount?
As far as, like budget objects.
Not really, because like I said, we're going to be focusing on maintenance.
So we can actually use the 24 budget to provide recommendations.
Yeah, other than the things that were already approved, because those are all already in the pipeline, but the subheadings from, under operational maintenance or capital or whatever. Yeah, I guess you could use, you want to comment on our computer software or stuff like that. But the capital projects have already been funded for 24. It'll just be what we're looking at for 25. There's some other things in there, the snow and ice and other stuff. So yeah, you can use the 24 as a basis, but knowing that what's on there has been approved and budgeted. So
yeah, but we can ask for stuff to be removed from the fiscal 24 budget.
It's already been approved.
We can ask for it to be amended. So,
sure. MDT projects, no update other than the Gibbon Street thing. The city was not made aware of that. The city was not consulted in the least on that. Even though that they probably made that crossing a little bit better. MDT still went and put median on city right away without consulting us at all.
That over by Walmart.
Yeah, that's the Gibbons is the western street that borders on North South Street that borders Walmart there. We first saw it when they had the lane closure that they were digging up in the middle of, basically, well, not in the middle, but on the edge of MDT right away. So didn't really know what they were doing and didn't really care because they were in there right away until One day they were pouring the curb, and all of a sudden they went down Gibbons and came back up, which again, not a huge thing, but there's some maintenance issues that we're going to run into because of that median. Again, I don't think they made that crossing any worse. They probably made it better, but it would have been nice to be consulted on things that are going to be affecting city right away.
And that's why I brought it up. Not that I'm opposed to the raised median. I wasn't expecting the raised median to be put in.
Neither was I.
It was advertised as a bridge resurfacing project. I appreciate that they tried to have some efficiencies with the construction zones, but I provided comments on there that I think if they were doing work in there, they could have gotten rid of those huge radiuses in there and the obsolete ADA ramps. That would have been an opportune time to fix those. So
there was a lot of things that they could have done there in cooperation with the city. I think they could have made that little portion of that project better. But again, when we don't even know about it until they're digging things up, it's kind of hard to go backwards.
What is the malfunction?
So the reason, if you go by there and you look to why they put in the raised median, it's to eliminate or try and prohibit the left-hand turns from the southbound traffic. They're trying to channelize.
It's a right in, right out. Yeah. But the problem is I don't believe, and I've always believed, that those pork chop islands are ineffective because they pull them back so far that you can still make a left-hand turn if you want to go against the signs. It's not prohibitive to vehicles from making that movement. If you really want to make a right in, right out, then you need to make it prohibitive for people making a left. And the current designs don't do that.
Yeah. But meanwhile, provide comments to, if MDT is serving the public should be aware of it.
Oh, yeah.
In the same, same with the city, that the public should be aware.
That was my question. Why didn't they consult? They just thought they were in their own right away and were confused about it, or what? They just don't care.
There's been a lot of staff changeover, and it just got missed. I'm like, well, then it got missed on Gibbons, it got missed on other projects, recent projects like Green Meadow. It got missed on what was the other one? But I mean, it's something that I think needs to be worked on, and not to say that the city would oppose their work. It's just that I think we have some input, not only from a board like this, but from a city staff perspective, that we could make the project better and get a lot more bang for our buck if we work together. Then, who knows? The city could have thrown in some dollars, or we could have contacted Walmart to have them improve the sidewalk down, all in one project while they have a contractor that's pouring concrete there. Let's be efficient with our money instead of, we're only going to do this little piece. And then, so the one thing I did want to bring up that what I'm going to be talking to them about on Prospect, they were surveying today. And I guess when your survey equipment is set up in the sidewalk, prohibiting, there was only in some areas less than a foot of travel space between their surveyed legs. I have an issue with that. It's one thing to do surveying or do some investigative work for future work, but if you're going to be impacting a side of the sidewalk, then it goes back to what, in my mind, what we expect our contractors and what MDT expects from their contractors. If they're blocking the sidewalk, they need to put them some signs and say use the alternate path and get them across the street where they can cross. That didn't happen in this case. In this case, if somebody in a wheelchair was going down the north side of Prospect today, they would have to divert into the grass, or because there was absolutely no room in a couple spots for anybody to get around. Even for an able-bodied person, they still would have had to walk out into the grass or into the what other landscaping there is. So I'm going to be talking to them about that, because I know it's to the guys out there or the gals that are out there, it may seem like it's a inconvenience or they just don't realize it, but there are members of our community that need those sidewalks and need the 48 inches and even in some cases more to traverse those areas. So
That's one thing I put on there, is even survey. What is project that you're surveying for? And that's why I put it up is, hopefully we can have this discussion now, so whatever happens on Prospect, we're not going to do.
I think my Outlook never did load. I think I have a quarterly meeting coming up with them, where the city, the county, and MDT and East Helena get together and talk about upcoming projects, and that's going to be one I'm going to be, because I noticed all the surveying that they're doing, and
they must be gearing up for something substantial. There's been a lot of surveying.
Well, yeah, I'm guessing it's a reconstruction, and what that looks like, I don't know. I would like to see
a complete street.
I would like to see a complete street,
Well,
boulevards at a minimum.
In the city of Helena, that's the expectation.
We haven't gotten to the point yet that that I've been able to get, MDT to adopt our complete street policy for doing work inside of Helena.
We'll help with that. That's why we're here.
But that's, I think that MDT, likes and requires in some instances that developers or cities, acquiesce to their standards. And I think in some of these cases, the MDT needs to recognize that the city has put in place policies or practices for specific reasons, and it's not only for city streets, because this, the highways are inside the city boundaries. Sometimes, like they just can't go out and make everything complete streets, and we get that. But when they do projects, I think the expectation is to at least consider the policies and practices of that municipality so that they can, be better recognized. So they're not like, well, this is obviously a Helena Street, and then this is something different, because they're two different things and they run right into each other or they teeth each other. So that's one of the other things that we've been working on with MDT.
The expectation is that we respect the wishes of our elected body, which is the policy.
That would be the hope.
And we'll help with that. That's why I brought it up now, is we can certainly help with that. Then the Montana safety study, I know that's in progress. Do you have any dates on?
I haven't got anything. And same with Lola Shepherd. I brought up my concerns a couple months ago and was told I'd get back to, and I know they're still working on some adjacent landowner stuff, but no other update that they've been providing since the last update I gave you on Lola.
Okay, I'll provide additional comments, but I think, to me, a complete street, they would put curb in there too, and trees along Centennial Trail. Whether they do or not, they'll okay. Anybody have any questions for David?
Not specifically for David, I guess, but based on what he told us about the budget, would be working on to spend the bulk of our next month's meeting talking about specific things for the fiscal year 2020.
We could do that. I'll flip out the budget and send it to MTAC members, and we can add that in the agenda item, just so people know what to be looking at.
At one point, we had listed our priorities. I think we listed our 2020. So yeah, we will maybe pare those down and sending more suggestions again.
Okay. The Henderson Bridge feasibility study, I know we talked about that last month, and I'd like to see that advertised sooner rather than wait for an easement. Because we're not actually doing the work there, it's just a feasibility study, so.
But if this railroad doesn't grant us the easement, then we wasted money on something that we'll never have. And that's the position that until we get that easement, which I keep getting back that they're at a train derailment when I send my ask for status update, and I don't know of any recent train derailments. So I'm wondering if so yeah. So we sent them the exhibits or some draft exhibits that they had requested for the easement so that they could better visualize the relationship of the old trail and the new trail, which for the new folks over at MRL and I guess BNSF at this point, I guess I can see because some of them haven't been in that position to see the genesis of this 5 or 6 year easement discussion. But I mean, they were pretty basic graphics showing the center line of the railroad tracks and the varying distance of the existing trail from the existing railroad tracks and the varying distance from the center line of the new one, which the new one is either equal to or farther away from the tracks. So that should only be a positive for them in their review. And then the other thing that was required way back when, which is in the typical section of the easement documents, is that any new improvements has to be fenced. There's got to be a barrier between the path and the railroad tracks. So we agreed to that. We agreed to push it as far south as we could. So in my mind, there really shouldn't be this much discussion over it. But I mean, they have their procedures, I guess, to go through now that it's changing hands again. So hopefully we'll hear something.
So are we on like a weekly email? Where that or how many?
I usually every few weeks I
really?
chime in and just see.
You can blame us. Every single month.
It's just yeah. So I'll see what comes back after I send the status update again this time. So
okay. Any other questions for David? Seeing none, we'll move on. Health Department report. Sarah could not be here tonight, but she did send out a doodle poll to Kevin and myself to schedule a walk audit at Rodney and 11th there. So that schedule will let people know. Moving on, report to the Helena Police Department. Lieutenant Xander, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry, Greg.
You there, Jason?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having some technical difficulties. What was the question?
You're cutting out quite a bit on our end.
Are you able to hear me?
That's better.
Is that better?
You're still cutting out.
I don't know what I can do any different. Is that any better?
That is.
Okay. What was the question?
Your report.
I don't really have anything to report. Just here for questions.
Any questions for Lieutenant Zander? Seeing none? Thank you.
Yep.
And then I got, moving on, complete street implementation. I have this on here. I think we just need to keep, having the conversation of, every project that we do in Helena needs to have a consideration of a complete street. What that is, that takes further discussion, but, that is the resolution, even MDT projects applies to maintenance projects. The city did implement a communication plan last year that actually is a pretty simple and easy communication plan about the level of whether it's an informational or what type of engagement is needed. So obviously anything on streets needs a higher level of community engagement. And then obviously the budget itself, I'll send it in the budget, but I mean, that is a goal in the budget, a good goal, so, everybody make known, 6th Avenue, I believe that is inadequate. It doesn't have curb outs on it, it's not a complete street. That's why we're going to look at 11th. There's the projects over in the 6th Ward district, especially around Helena High, that we would be remiss if we did not, and we're quite frankly entitled to a complete street on some of these projects, by commission approval. So that's something, David, we need to obviously rely on you to keep us informed of things so we can provide comments, hopefully at the front end of a project rather than the back end of the project. Moving on, anybody, any questions or further input on that?
Well, I guess I don't know that it's a helpful comment, but it always does somewhat worry me that complete streets is a paradigm that, we'll accommodate you on our street. So the street is for cars, but we'll make it complete. We'll accommodate that. Where really, rather than putting a bike lane on Prospect, you'd be so much ahead to have the Centennial Trail complete and just have the bikes accommodated in a different facility altogether. So I do think it's warranted to be somewhat careful, I guess, on the case-by-case basis on complete streets, because just because it's complete and there's a bike lane painted there doesn't mean it's really providing what I think we would like to see, which is legitimate non-motorized option for people that don't it's great to have a complete street for someone who out of necessity has to be on that street, and that's kind of the idea I think of complete streets as well. If you can't drive or you're stuck in a car, well, we should at least try to some way accommodate you to be there. But really, I think our bigger goal should be how do we truly have a non-motorized transportation network, not just an add-on to sort of accommodate people who encourage non-motorized transportation, not just have people, not just if it's absolutely necessary, some bare minimum to help you, if you have no other option.
Yeah, I mean, those are good comments, and just because you put a bike lane on Prospect doesn't make it a complete street, or even it should be a complete street. You put bike lanes on Cedar Street or Helen Avenue, it's just not a comfortable environment. And I think the complete street policy is, is you vet that, and evaluate, you put bike lanes on Prospect or the best to create you know, Sharrow's on the adjacent street. But I do, you know, one thing so I went to the Joint Engineers Conference a couple weeks ago, and, you know, the guy from Missoula, the planner from the MPO, was there. And, you know, they kind of move around, as we develop this, our MPO here for Helena, you know, there is a shift in transportation planning, and a healthy shift, about putting people first, and rather than the traditional traffic engineering, the plans are based on, you know, public engagement, community vitality, and serving disadvantaged people. You know, those are the three important criteria. And, you know, learn that, for Custer Avenue as an example, what not to do.
So, Lucas, do you see a more holistic policy replacing complete street at some point? Well, I just, to me, I think it's, maybe be careful with, I think it means different things to different people. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, in some ways, I think, and I think I've said this before, and, you know, part of the problem is that it's hard to envision a different way, and it's easy to say, well, you could improve this road and add a sidewalk, but it's hard to envision that, you know, a sort of a different paradigm where you have paths that are non-motorized paths that, you know, prioritize that. And so, you know, I think that maybe that would be something that would be worthwhile to try to do, present a different vision of, you know, what our transportation network could look like, so that people could envision, you know, an alternative way of doing things. I mean, the example that comes to me is the, you know, the downtown multimodal plan. I mean, the question was whether it was feasible to have a connection between the path at the Great Northern and the downtown walking mall, and there was none of the alternatives were that, and they couldn't imagine having a path between two places. And so I think that, you know, could be something that would be worthwhile for us to do. Maybe something for a future discussion. Try to, you know, envision, I guess, a different, more different kind of paradigm. Not this, you know, well, how can we on the existing streets put a bike lane? But, you know, what would you do if you had a transportation network that was non-motorized? What would you need?
And that's as we get to the, I guess the governor did sign the MPO. Is that right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step, you know, I guess the question. So when will we have a fully functioning MPO? Now with the governor signed.
So he signed the designation. We have an interlocal, a 3Cs agreement, a PL agreement, a performance agreement. I think I'm missing 2 agreements that MDT wants signed. The bylaws for the PCC and TAC are probably 98% done, but unfortunately those are, you know, down here. We're working on the interlocal to see how MDT wants to see our interlocal, because so we're working on that right now. That one's probably the one that needs the most work, the 3Cs and all those other agreements or templates from MDT. The only one that really that has a fair bit of revisions that are needed is the PL agreement. And that's just basically, how are those PL funds going to be distributed? Are we going to, use the PL funds, planning funds for a staff person? Is it going to be for the plans? Is it going to be hybrid? Some of the staff, some of that, how that looks. Right now, the way we're leaning is the staff person will be funded from the PL funds, which will still leave a decent amount of money in there for the upcoming plans that are going to be required, the LRTP, the UPWP, the Unified Planning something. This is the very first plan that we have to get, which then says, and that one says, we're going to use our money for the LRTP, which as we get farther down as the MPO, the UPWP actually has a bit more significance. But like the first couple of years, we're just going to be in that planning mode because we have to have some of these planning documents, and we weren't allowed to have any of these planning documents start prior to the designation because then they wouldn't count. So my intent was to try to get the LRTP up and running so that by the time we got designated, those big decisions that really made came after the designation, to where some of the data collection and all that stuff would have taken place prior to the designation. And that was nixed by MDT, saying that we couldn't use any of the information gathered prior to designation. Just a thing. So you'll see a flurry. So we're hoping within the next 2 to 3 weeks we can get all those agreements done, and we have to give them to MDT for the final review, and then they'll go to one package, one package thing to each the commission of the county commission, the city commission, and East Helena for their signatures. Once we have those done, we get the UPWP, which we'll be doing basically at the same time, which again, it's going to be very simple. We're going to do the LRTP. That's the first big one that we have to get done. Then we'll have the first PCC meeting, the Policy Coordinating Committee meeting, which then will adopt the bylaws and designate the TAC as the other entity, and then we'll get rolling on from there. So I envision hopefully we can have the PCC meeting in January, followed up with a TAC meeting sometime in February, March. Just kind of depends on how fast these agreements get through MDT and the respective municipalities.
And then we'll have a long range transportation plan that is kind of covering.
The LRTP will take a year to formulate. That's what they typically take. By the time you do all this outreach and the data collection, and they have to do a update the transportation demand models. So a traditional LRTP that was done by a community that wasn't an MPO had this requirements. MPO has this many requirements. Our last update, knowing that we were going to be very close to becoming an MPO, we had already incorporated some of the MPO requirements into our current LRTP. So there's still some other things that need to be added into there, but we're not going to be making that giant leap to the MPO requirements. So, and there's, the last LRTP, there was separate things for the county and the city. I don't know if that's the way we're going to go, because we're going to be all designated as the MPO. So it's going to be, one list, but obviously that won't happen. That'll be in the budget, probably in the FY25 budget for that reimbursement. So the way the MPO works for the PL funds is whoever's the designated entity, which for the most part, the city of Helena is the designated entity to house the staff or whatever. We have to front the money and then get reimbursements from the state on a quarterly basis. So all the plans and everything will be fronted. Will be have money in the budget, which is technically going to be obligated, but we get it back. So it's more of a, I guess, a kind of revolving fund that we'll have in the MPO realm, so that we can pay the bills for the plans and then get reimbursed and then back and forth.
So will we have an opportunity to give public input on the plan? Or does
Oh,
the
yeah.
public have an opportunity?
There was 22 individuals, or maybe not, maybe more than that, individual stakeholder meetings. So they met with MTAC specifically as a single entity. They met with the bicycling committee, they met with the hiking committee, they met with downtown businesses. That's all takes place while they're gathering some of the data, so that when they start, formulating some projects or looking at, policy changes or whatever, there's been some public input. So there's that initial public input, and then once they start formulating things, there's other meetings that get set up to talk about options that they may come up with, whether it's changes to the engineering standards or changes to city code or changes to whatever. They start talking to those so that the public has input on those, so that when they go, whether, if there's, a lot of support for changing whatever city code, then they can, all that public participation has, in essence been done, and it can get onto the commission agenda, or they can adopt a plan and then change the code or whatever. So a lot of that legwork and public participation is almost a continuous effort. The first couple months is a lot of data collection, getting, growth numbers, getting traffic numbers, getting pedestrian counts, getting crash data, and compiling all that. And then they kind of get into that public participation mode. And then there's, as we move on. So it takes about a year to do, but there's multiple opportunities for public engagement, not only as individually, but group meetings and like public meetings versus, and then also the updates that we'll be providing the commission at whatever interval we set.
So is it city going to do it in-house, or is it going to be contracted?
No, it'll be contracted.
So
We don't have the staffing for that detailed and large a plan. And this one's going to be a little different because the MPO area, I mean, I shouldn't say it's going to be different. It's going to be different because of the MPO requirements. The area, the planning area is going to be the same, because our last LRTP planning area was, it basically went all the way out to the lake. It went up to the North Hills. It went out to Birdseye and Lincoln and down to the Jefferson County border and out east to basically the county line. So it basically encompassed the entire valley. So that probably won't change. What I would say is that boundary that's the LRTP right now will probably become the planning area for the MPO, so that the metropolitan planning area, the designating where the census is, isn't what we're confined to. The area can be larger than that, because otherwise then we're getting little strips of here and there, and it doesn't really make sense. So we'll keep that whole planning area so that, our plan can inform, Highway 279 or I-15 or, East Helena, so that the plan is comprehensive for the whole valley.
When could we be have the MPO? Would you, I guess, giving the dates, you said maybe by March, April, we might have the MPO fully functional? Is that reasonable?
Hopefully.
And then we could actually be starting advertising for a LRTP update in June.
No, because we don't have the money budgeted. we're going asking for a budget amendment to bring on the staff person. We asked for 6 months, but we realized by the time it gets approved and we get the advertisement out and blah, 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 it's going to be something less than 6 months. But we want to get that person on as quickly as we can so that they can, come in on the tail end of this process and not have to kind of relearn what we did. And then they would be, in charge of finishing out and finalizing some of these documents that are required, getting the PCC and the TAC up and running so that those entities can start making, having some meetings and understanding their roles, and then also putting a budget together for the LRTP coming forward, and that'll be in the FY25 budget. So, my intent would be to have basically the RFQ prepped and ready prior to the adoption of the FY25 so that within July, after it gets adopted, we can get that RFQ out and start working on that. Because as you know, the data collection is a lot needs to take place during the nice weather where we can actually get good head counts and good bicycle counts. Trying to do that data collection in the middle of the winter is not going to be, other than around schools, which they'll have to go out and recount. But so that would be the intent if we get that budget passed.
My wish, I guess, for the LRTP is I'd have to see if I can use the RFP that Missoula use. Missoula planning document is it's leaps and bounds above some of the old traditional ones. It's excellent, so that's why I'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they met it because they're already an MPO, and we can review it and take a look at it. They're being very dotting the I's and crossing the T's. MDT is right now with this MPO process, and so we're going to have to specifically call out what's in the CFR or what's in FTA or whatever to look at those pieces, but that doesn't mean we can't add other things.
So will the hiring, having an NPO person, typically a planner, is there like a job description? I guess I'd like to see that planner person. An engineer, I'd like to see him not be an engineer. Yeah, that's with you. Somebody that has has more of an emphasis on non-motorized.
So I mean that would be part of the job description. I think we're leaving it with the hiring climate that we're in. We're not, targeting just a planner. We're leaving it a little bit open so that those people that didn't maybe fall under the planner title have an opportunity, because we went out and looked at some of the MPO applications that we did find. Some of them specifically called out engineers, some specifically called out planners, some called for a mix. Some called out project managers. And when you look at some of these resumes of folks, a lot of them are planners, like I said, and some of them are engineers, and some of them are, folks that non-motorized or another facet of transportation was kind of their forte, and they worked their way up, and they got to a level that they, applied for this MPO position, and they got it, and are doing, good work. So we didn't want to exclude some of those other folks. So as we would say, the planner or the engineer professional credentials are desirable. We're not saying that you must have this, just so we don't narrow that pool too much.
Will MTAC be available? Can we get a member of MTAC on interviews?
I have to review what the hiring practices are for an MPO. I think there's maybe some nuances that I'm not aware of, but I'll definitely keep that in mind when I'm looking at doing that. Like I said, my original hope was to get the advertisement out in December, first part of December. Take applications basically up until, the Christmas break.
Mhm.
Look at them, that last week of December, first week of January. Schedule interviews, sometime in that January timeframe, but our budget amendment is not going until in front of the commission until the 4th. So, advertisement and stuff. I mean, we'll still be pretty close to that timeline, but we'll be pushed back a week or two, in my mind.
So you're advertising January, mid-January?
It's one of those things that I'd like to get the advertisement out as soon as possible. But when you span a holiday like Thanksgiving or Christmas, sometimes it doesn't work out as well. So it might be, January 2nd, the first advertisement goes out, just so that people don't inadvertently miss something or don't get something submitted on the right day because, they left for their family Christmas vacation, on the 16th or something, and it would be the 17th or, I just don't want to miss out on a good candidate that, has just something wrong, with the timing. So you're
Okay.
right.
All right. Well, sorry, we got off topic there, but that's
No.
great information. I think we're on Helen Middle School speed zone. We actually talked about that. That was one of the Dave, your update, and well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate being responsive to the school district. Yeah.
Well, just a note on that. Going around to some of the schools, it was my impression that we already had school zones around all the schools, and we don't. So we can't just go out and blanket the entire city, but it is a priority for the traffic guys to start going around and getting those school zones put up where they're appropriately needed, and then working with the school district to, on their side to help us identify where they would like to see crossings versus kind of controlled chaos of, because we went into the meeting. Well, we have kids, do this, and well, we can't have crosswalks. I mean, we need to find those specific areas that we want them, and try to encourage them to cross at the marked crosswalks. And one of the problems that we're finding is, there may be sidewalks around the schools, but the adjacent neighborhoods don't have sidewalks. And that'll be one of the main topics on the sidewalk summit discussion on how to implement sidewalk district. How do we get sidewalks? Start with the schools and work our way out so that we can get some of these connectivity issues. Is it identifying a specific route like on Allen Middle School from across Billings there to make sure that we have connected sidewalks between Helena High and the middle school and not worry about some of the other side streets? Or do we just start working our way out? So that's kind of a discussion that needs to take place on that. As you know, if we just set a contractor in the neighborhood, we're going to get a lot easier or a lot better contract or prices, good prices, instead of, well, you're going to go do this block and then this block and then this block and then having to pick up and move all over the place. So it'll be a discussion now.
Yeah, and that's what so the LiDAR survey is all done, but we'll start the discussion on the sidewalk stuff about the implementation. And in theory, starting at the schools and work outward makes sense, but how that actually lays out, and let's see if that is the best option to do. What that actually looks like.
So with the new software, we'll be able to look at that to see what corridors make sense. I'm not going to say it has AI, but it does have some built-in intuitive processing so that we can look at specific either corridors or areas and see what the costs are going to be. It might be designating certain routes and getting those done first so that we have the connectivity, and then going back and filling the gaps. Or it might just be one option that was always put out there is making sure everything on the emergency snow routes was done and complete. And then making sure all the priority ones and twos and threes, because that's where not only the vehicle traffic, but the pedestrian and bicycle traffic travel. So does it go that route? Start at the schools and work our way out. It's very interesting if you start, I mean, we just did a quick tabletop, but it's very quickly, if you have a good amount of funding per year, starting at the schools and working your way out, it's very quickly you get those overlapping circles, and then you can start directing those, those extra funds that already get those other circles to, prioritize, filling in the gaps. So, it's not going to be quick. It's not going to be like a 5-year thing. It's going to take some time, but we'll work it out and come up with the best plan so that we can try to at least connect the community so that there is a route from all aspects of the community to not only the schools, but to other destination facilities.
Or just go walk the dog.
Or just walk the dog. I mean, a destination is your house to the park or whatever. So, I mean, again, it goes down to definition, like Lucas said. What's your definition of destination? Is it mall? Is it the old mall? Is it Costco? Is it the park? So
or even just, I mean, if you guys are Fall Art Walk, I mean, there were a ton of people out there, and that's the sidewalks, which supports the energy of our community. Moving on, the monthly progress report. Is that something we want to continue doing, or should we do it on the agenda here? We're actually moving through this pretty quick. We've had that written report in the past. What do you think, Dave? Do you have any input?
Well, like I said, I prefer just to give my report on things that are happening, present and future policy and MBT. I think we've caught up on a lot of this stuff, and some of the things that you added, the reason they weren't on there is because there just isn't an update. I could tell you that I've emailed MRL, 4 times and received nothing, or I could tell you that I talked to MBT and got nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm committed to giving you guys as many updates as is what's going on. But adding things that have been talked about, or there is no update, I don't see as a benefit to put onto the agenda, especially if don't have anything for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Centennial Trail needs to be on here always, even if there is no update, because it's important.
Well, I mean, we keep emailing.
Yep, and that's the update.
I have a sneaking suspicion, and this is just speculation on my part, but if I remember, the turnover was the first of the year or the end of this year. So I have a sneaking suspicion that everything's kind of on hold until they make sure that the turnover from NRL to BNSF is completed as flawlessly as it can be. And some of this, I don't want to say, some of these things that they may not see as important to their business model, but is important to us, are getting put on the back burner so that they can make sure this transition gets done and completed on time. That's just an assumption on my part. I don't have any basis of that, but
I would expect that. It's not a priority for them because.
So, well, maybe we're both right.
But we got to keep asking.
Yeah, we are. I'll tell you that we keep asking. It's just we're not getting much response.
I guess, Greg, my comment would be if there's a limited number of hours for a meeting, we should make sure that we're not just discussing the same things that haven't changed over and over, aren't going to change. So maybe we, have other priorities and changes that we can make happen.
Okay, I agree with that. Yeah, cool. The other one on here is the downtown multimodal plan recommendations. So the city did adopt the downtown multimodal plan. They came up with, some recommendations. And these are the ones, these can be budget items for next year, so have you guys looked at, this at all? I have, but it's been a while. So you're not ready to make any action items or anything on it.
If I could just chime in here, Greg, it might be worth maybe inviting John Dendy from the BID to the next meeting and letting him know that you want to talk about some of these items so you can see where the BID is and potentially the DHI, even though they're kind of in a restructuring mode right now, but invite them to the next meeting to kind of have that, I guess, more in-depth conversation to see, so maybe everyone get on the same page at least.
That's a great comment, to make sure that we're aligned. They're all, most of them are good projects, but you can't do all of them at once, and prioritizing the ones we want, within the next, the short term, medium term, and long. Okay. But I'll send this out, it's chapter 7. Is this posted on the website, Dave, now? Okay.
It should be, unless it, or it was, I should say.
No, I just see, I must have pulled this, it's got these dates on it, I must have put it off, but when it was on the consent agenda.
Yeah, let me check, but
were there, just Dave, real quick, were there changes from the draft to the final plan, or, because I still have only looked at maybe ought to stop there. Is there any changes from the draft and through public comment? Do you know?
I think there were some minor changes. I do know all the comments that were received are in the appendix for as public comment received.
Yep. Yeah, I have the draft still, so I wasn't sure. So thanks.
And if you can't find it, I'll look forward to it. If not, we'll get
I'm double checking now, and if it's not, I'll make sure that Jake gets it put up.
And if you wouldn't mind, if you just check and then just send us the link.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, and then there's table 7.1.2 has the transportation improvements. So feel free to read the entire document, but you can just go to that. Okay, moving on, member communications, proposals for future agendas. We've talked to this in depth. The stop signs, yield signs, and 20-mile-per-hour speed zone. I don't want to get it off the agenda. Would you guys feel comfortable, or do you think we need, the city attorney opinion on these 2 items at all? Do you feel strongly enough we want to pursue it?
From what I understood from our previous discussion, if we don't really think that we're going to have a lot of power to change, correct?
Well, that's
especially the stop sign of yield for bikes.
And it might be that the city attorney comes back and says it has to be a state issue. That's the value of getting the attorney. And the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is, the mechanism to do that would be actually, I believe would be to change all the speed limit signs from 25 to 20 would be the effective way to actually.
I don't think you can. The default speed limit in Montana per Montana code is 25. And anything below that has to, I think, have an engineering study. That's how the school zones are. They're, I don't want to say they're deemed, there's a potential hazard.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the attorney, because, this may be applied, we may know that we're just asking for, they're not feasible here.
Yeah, well, another question is there any political will to do that? Because
There was some political will the last legislative session. For changing some of the non-motorized stuff, but I think it just, I don't know. I wasn't at all the hearings, but it seemed like it just lost. I don't want to say support, but it's, the momentum just didn't carry some of it through.
I guess my take on it is that both for speed limits and stop signs, it requires that people are obeying them. Then really the more better way to things is to do traffic calming to where people naturally drive slower. Putting a 20-mile-an-hour sign on a 40-mile-an-hour road doesn't prevent that horrendous accident, kill somebody, because the person who caused that accident is just ignoring the sign.
How about James or Kevin? Do you guys have any comments?
My thought on it is, I mean, I knew this was gonna be a topic again on the agenda, and so so it's 61.8.310 is the Montana code provision, and David's recitation of it, just from my lens, is not a legal opinion, but what he said generally is what the statute says, which is, is subject to an engineering study or a traffic study on the basis of safety. So to decrease the speed limit, so the blanket authority that we were envisioning, I don't know if that exists. And I know we talked about getting an attorney opinion from the city attorney. So I mean, I'm still curious about that, just so we can close this loop for now, or have clear next steps on what to do here. But as far as keeping on the agenda with, without that legal opinion and not basing it off of maybe what Mayor Lucas thinks about it, would seem like a next step, or it's a legislative thing at that point. So
we need to have that same conversation about the stop sign as yield for cyclists, or is that different?
It would still be asking the city attorney opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's within it's the area that we are looking at. It's other states have done it. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm hesitant to rely on a legal opinion from, or anything that Lucas and I say. It'd be good to have something that we can just close this for us, as a council. So.
Have you tried contacting Bike Walk Montana?
No, I don't think we're even.
I was just wondering if they had a contact who was taking some of this non-motorized stuff to the legislature, that, maybe you could contact them to sit down and talk about, again, what your thoughts are, so that,
Yeah,
if they're hearing from other communities and want this, then that's something that they could take up that at next legislative, so if it is a legislative, just a thought.
yeah, and I do have some of those names of people who brought some of that e-bikes forward. I guess my preference would be to just deprioritize this and move on. Both of these things, I don't think is anything we can do about, or really what we should be focused on.
For these items, if we just submitted, or if we voted on it and submitted it to the commission, would all of that other stuff kind of take care of itself in that review, or?
Could you repeat the question,
So,
please?
for the stop sign in the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit thing, if we just vote on it and approve it here in the committee, when it goes to the commission, is that not something that they would evaluate? Or so do we need to have that legal evaluation done here, or is that something that happens elsewhere?
Well, actually, it is in the new bylaws that we can request a legal opinion. My thought is, you know, I don't want to send something to the commission if it's just a dead end and it's just a waste of time, you know, that's why you get a professional opinion on it before we pursue it any further. And are even asking for a legal opinion, you know, we're an advisory board to the commission, so we'd have to ask the commission to give us a legal opinion. So we could even, you know, we could make an action item on these two items, asking the commission to provide us a legal opinion, but we're still relying on the commission to follow up on that and, you know, bring it to the attorney's office also. So we could make an action item that we may not even see a response on it. So that's kind of the political will, is if we want to even make that as an action item.
Okay.
That's gonna be. Yeah, I don't think it's in our. We have a limited amount of time for ear of the commission. I just don't think it's always use of our time.
So just to clarify, one of us couldn't contact the city attorney directly and ask the question.
One of us absolutely can reach out
As
to
a citizen, we could do that. Okay. But not as
a citizen that just happens to be.
Yeah.
Good. Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
But to do it through this body.
We are technically advisory by the commission, so that's our direct line of communication. So. Well, from what I'm getting, kind of consensus direction from the group is we'll just drop this. It's not a high priority. I will reach out to I know one of the former active members of Fight Walk Montana, John Juris. I know we have one that has to do some of that electronic e-bike stuff. I might just reach out to him and I can report back next month. And Lucas, if you have any contacts, you can see if there's any traffic.
That'd be great. Yeah, Greg, that'd be awesome, because we have spent time on it. I know certain members are really interested in it. I'd be curious to see if they've done any digging on their end, and if there is, I know we're an off legislative year, but if there's any push for that or any momentum, that'd be great. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Moving on, the next one was, this is kind of a policy, and I don't know how to deal with this either. The city method of acquiring public input on street projects that increase motor vehicle capacity. Essentially, now the way I see, we have a communications plan. The process should have, a public process on it. And it should be part of the LRTP update also. So this is kind of a policy thing where, my thought behind this one is, really it's Benton Avenue. You guys know I don't support widening Benton Avenue. It's crazy. And I don't even know how we got to that point of widening Benton Avenue.
And it's not widening the whole entire Benton Avenue, it's adding 2 turn lanes.
I disagree with it, and that's, and as a public, I get to voice my opinion on that, and I don't think that's a good utilization of the street funds, and I get to voice that opinion, so, maybe, I don't know if it's worth pursuing this any further. Just keep in mind that this could be something that's actually in the LRTP update also, the policy.
Well, the MPO, just to chime in, sorry, has a public participation component that has to be, that's one of the other multiple things that are required before we can actually jump off and start doing MPO stuff, is having that public participation plan. So, which the community development has already done one that is kind of in line with Senate Bill 382. There's the one that we're looking at through, I think it's Missoula and Great Falls. There are already existing communication plans, so that we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, there's no reason to write communicate or a public participation plan when there's numerous plans already out there and that we can basically use and that are already adopted and already following the CFR and already meet all the MPO requirements. So again, that was one of those components that you'll see coming in the next month or so.
Anybody else have any comments on this item? I think if we're engaged, in the LRTP update, this will kind of take care of itself. But, on Benton Avenue itself, that's why I want to see the budget, to remove it from the budget. That's why, selfishly, that's one of my goals. So.
Looking at Anna over there, but well, maybe we need to make sure we're soliciting public comment, I guess, as appropriate for our.
It's down on number 4, but
I think you're supposed to ask it
on everything,
on every item, right? I've not read the rules of order that we agreed to follow.
Yeah, I guess number 4 is public comment on any item, not on this at the end. Well, and then so polite, I'll just open it up. And I should just open up that if you do have comments, just, politely.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, I definitely not to exclude you, but I know you're respecting the body as well here too. Okay, and the next one is the CIP. That's part of the city long-term goals for impact visioning. Can we get a copy, or is the CIP on the website, Dave? That you can
It's not. I was going to get that copy to you, and I just didn't. So
okay. We'll expect that.
That's everything usually on the website, is that just sort of website transition?
yeah, I think they're trying to find where. So I did look while we were talking, and the downtown multimodal is not on there. Right, while we were talking, I emailed Jake and our admin coordinator to get it on. So it'll be under the, we'll send you the link, but it'll be under the transportation department, and on the homepage, there's studies and plans. Yeah. I was just going to check to see if it's made it on. So oh, there it is, capital improvement plan. So it looks like they only have 18 and 19 up. I'll ask finance and see if that just isn't coming through, or if they have it in a different location.
Okay. And then moving on, the last month we had the report from the walk audit at National Avenue in Argyle. You know, I was on that walk audit. You know, the recommendations from that were to put bulb outs on National Avenue where Centennial Trail comes in, and then put a, you know, some type of a shared use path on the east side of National up to Argyle, and from the south side of Argyle over to Montana. So it'll connect the link between Centennial Trail and the Montana Avenue crossing. Are you guys ready to make an action item on that, or any other further questions, comments?
So I guess if we're trying to stay at the higher policy level, would a recommendation about this specifically be better if it was couched as a, you know, please complete the entirety of something with the, you know, instead of like, please do these specific things, please, you know, have this larger project completed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
You know, and in that vein, could that just be part of our suggestions for, you know, say next year's budget or something like that? You know, budget the money to complete all of this, and then we can even, at some points, maybe even lay off like what's the.
Yeah, I do think in some ways maybe part of the problem with kind of the way that we have been doing things is, well, here's a good idea, but then it never kind of gets into that system of, okay, well, what does that cost? Okay, are we willing to spend this money on this? And so, yeah, maybe we need to kind of be focused on that, kind of as per David's recommendations. What specifically are we going to push for this next budget cycle, so we can, you know, figure out, so that they can figure out what that would cost, and the commission make a decision on what it will, you know, what they can fund.
Yeah, and Lucas, I appreciate that, and Joel, it's a good question, it's a good point. Just putting the pieces together from my lens on this meeting, this conversation, and how David sort of led off with what's coming up in the budget cycle, then discussing the multimodal plan and identifying its identification of certain projects, our walk audits, our sort of list sheets we put together of past action items that maybe haven't gone anywhere. It seems like maybe there's a circle up here that we could do to, you know, put together. I don't know if it's a package or what, if that's the right way to phrase it, to the commission. So I guess maybe to your point, Lucas, it's not a one-off. It's more, hey, here's the sort of the end of the year list of priorities from MTAC in a top 5 or a top 10 or whatever, however that looks, where we see risk reward or cost benefit from our lens. I don't know, it seems to be worth it given the last few meetings and the conversations from city staff and personnel. That's just my take, or maybe adding on to the pile of what Lucas and Joel are saying. So just an idea though, as we look to our next meeting.
Okay, so, so I guess from my two, you guys, we would like asking the budget for, not the completion of the entire Centennial Trail, but components of it.
Well, yeah, and I guess I feel like it's worth the discussion to revisit, I guess, what we kind of have done before. What are priorities? What do we think are the most important things?
And we talked about this, I think, we had our meeting a couple months ago about action items we've had, motions we've made, and then them just sort of not going anywhere necessarily. And so it seems like, I don't know, maybe it's not worth it, but there was some great walk audits we've done, some good opportunities we've looked at that, are they worth revisiting to try to request in the next budget cycle? Are those just left where they are? And maybe this, the National Avenue Argyle is a good example of another one of those that instead of it's a one-off, like Lucas was saying, it's not necessarily working in the past, that we take this as an opportunity to make a more joint request. I don't know, just an idea.
Well, I'm fine, leaving it for a budget recommendation. Because I think obviously what we've learned in the past is that, just providing an action item, it hasn't been successful.
Right.
I think from a commission, they need to see, not just the project, speak in dollars, what is the cost of a project, and that will, allow the transportation department to put, a dollar sign to it to allow the commission to make decisions. That makes sense? Okay.
Does to me, I can't see Joel, so I know he's the one with the original question, and I'm curious if Joel, if you had any thoughts on that.
No, yeah, that makes the make more broad recommendations that are more focused on things like the budget that the commission can actually kind of lift this up a little bit, and then ultimately it's going to be up to city staff to make this specific project happen in whatever way they think best to design it and implement it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to leave this on there. Just it's actually kind of placeholder for the budget, on our minds. But I'm fine with that. As we'll start looking at budget recommendations in there. Okay. Next one, moving on, city long-term goals for MTAC visioning. I think that's with the budget, the CIP, LRTP update. Lucas, do you have anything else? I think that was one of your comments that I added on there from our last meeting. Do you have anything you want to expand there, or have any other thoughts?
No, but I do think that it's a good thing to have on the agenda, something that allows us to have a bigger picture discussion. Yes, for what are the long-term goals? I guess my personal opinion. I think the long-term goals should include mixed-use paths, a path from the west side woods over to the hospital on the other side of town. You know, 2 or 3 paths intersecting that, going north and south from the mountain down to, you know, out to the valley, that, you know, are plowed in the winter and, you know, for mixed use, bicycle use, and, you know, designed to limit interaction with vehicles. And, yeah, probably the only way to do that would be to, you know, redesignate some of the currently roads that are prioritized for motor vehicles to be, you know, reprioritized for non-motorized travel. But, you know, there's, you know, you've got to, and I guess, you know, my thinking on this is, has been, you know, informed by the experience in Chicago, I guess. You know, they 100 years ago had a plan to create a walk. It took 100 years to do it, but you know, at some point, you know, you never have a plan. It's never going to happen. And so, you know, what is our transportation to be in Helena in 50 years or 100 years? Well, if there's never any vision for anything different, it's just going to be more of the same. But you know, that's not the case. I mean, it's not going to. I don't believe it's going to be the same. And so, you know, we should plan for changes that, you know, are inevitable. And you know, I think some increase in non-motorized transportation is happen whether we like it or not, and you know, building the proper planning for the proper, you know, sort of infrastructure that will make that you know, a healthy and profitable sort of transportation network is, you know, it's time to start now. So, you know, I guess in some ways what I would kind of like to see would be some thing that the MTAC puts together, just, you know, basically kind of like a map. Hey, this is what, you know, in 100 years we would envision the transportation network and how it should look like. Certainly it's not going to happen overnight, but this would be, you know, a perfect world what we would want.
That's a great, I appreciate that. That's healthy. The Missoula Transportation Plan has that. You know, they've got the, I can't remember what they call them. I think neighborhood routes, but they've identified these neighborhood routes. You know, in Missoula, and a lot of them just, you know, get the campus. But we could actually include this in the LRTP update. You know, this non-motorized vision. You know, I totally agree with the, you know, the multi-use path. You know, like we've got 9, but it could definitely use some improvement, you know, on it, on how it actually works. You know, right now it's just signs. You know, and how we improve that. You know, Prickly Pear Land Trust is working on the loop trail corridor. You know, that would go Prickly Pear to 10 Mile Creek, and how this would create the loops and the north-south and the east-west connectivity. That generation will appreciate it. You know, my son's generation will hopefully appreciate the work we put in to try and at least lay the groundwork for that. So, I mean, and that's why I keep asking about the LRTP update, because I think it has the potential to be much more valuable than it has in the past. You know, especially for non-motorized transportation. And you know, they're really geared for planning. You know, geared toward funding opportunities. And they've police and transportation industry have noticed a lot of inequities in the past. So transportation projects have been implemented. So we're trying to correct them. Yeah, so that, I think we can leave that on the no action item there, honestly, but I mean, I think overall discussion is the TP update, and hopefully maybe not even LRT, call it something differently, is an opportunity, you know, to have this brand vision. So, Kevin, James, you guys have any comments?
Nope, nothing for me, thanks.
I guess maybe this is going off the rails, but you know, like the complete street stuff, you know, that's kind of more like half the picture too. We've got to have like a denser city that makes those complete streets work. I don't know if that's any way we can work that into non-motorized travel, but
I actually had this on my list for potential future communications discussion. Is changes to our zoning regulations. That's one thing that was brought up from the MPO planner from Missoula is, you know, the city of Helena has parking minimums, and really those should be parking maximums. And I guess studies have shown that if you actually make parking hard, it forces people to change their habits, and you know, let the market decide how much parking should have for each structure. You know, really from a city, there should be hardly any parking. You know, it's non-taxable property. You know, it should be buildings. You know, the other thing is, you know, from a zoning perspective is, you know, street building frontage, you know, going to a form-based code. Downtown overlay has it, but, you know, the building should be, you know, oriented to the sidewalk. You shouldn't have to walk through a mass of parking to get to the building, you know, and those things create, you know, actually just create a much more vibrant community.
yeah, exactly what I was alluding to. So that's all I have.
Okay, well, I'll put this on the agenda for future discussions. But yeah, they're great things to talk about. We're running out of time here. My son's getting antsy, but I don't blame him. We've been here 2 hours now. The next one, the meeting of interest, PO6 plan update. I don't have an update there other than that we should get a draft of that plan, you know, sometime soon, you know, or I should say, hopefully within the next. Do you have any update or anything at all? Yeah.
I've asked for me being able to comment on, and I haven't seen it.
Yeah. And I can reach out to the city planning department, and you know, the last time I think said they were anticipating like 2 months. You know, but of course we're in December, not a great time to send something out for public comment. But again, I'll just keep tabs on it and let people know, because that's another, you know, opportunity to, you know, to get policy wise, get our vision, our thoughts in plans itself rather than, you know, non-functional action items, I guess. So, okay, moving on, public comment on any item not on this agenda. So, you know, and I'll open it up. No comment. Grant? No comment. Anybody else have anything not listed on the agenda, but want to include the agenda for future discussions? Even if not, just email me. text me and we can add it to the agenda for future discussion, so. Next meeting will be December 12th, 5:15. It is scheduled in this room right here. Actually, this room. Actually, kind of a nicer room for.
Would you prefer this room? Because I can change it from 426.
I mean, if the Alzheimer group is booked, you know, in that room for next year or whatever, I'm perfectly.
We're booked for the next year over there.
Well,
so if I don't know what their meeting schedule is. I talked to Troy, the facility manager, and that room works out a little bit better for them, but that room's also getting upgraded like these ones, and that's the component piece that doesn't work well for them, from what he said. But I don't know what, if we want to, I can look at the availability of this room to see if you guys would prefer to meet here. I mean, it's all part of the same building, so it doesn't matter if we're in 426 or 3.
say if the Alzheimer groups want, it seems like they have more people in their group, and if they're planning on next year using that room, I would use that room to the Alzheimer group.
Is there a way in this room to make Zoom work on the screen so we're not just working off the individual laptops too? Or
Yeah, we can log in from over there, and the mics and the cameras over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say let's just plan on using this room unless there's another conflict, and tell the Alzheimer's group they can have room in 426.
Yeah, I'll just have to check to see if there's not anybody that wasn't on the calendar for this. There usually isn't. I mean, the rooms at from 5 to 7.
Nobody over here, the one on the opposite side of the floor is empty too, isn't it?
326.
Yeah.
Typically, but if there's public meetings or whatever, that's usually the room that are held in, just for. It has the same nice chairs, and it has a pretty high capacity compared to this room.
Okay. No other comment. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
Okay. Motion by James. Second.
I'll second.
Second by Kevin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Okay.